speaking of AD, he is moving on to a new team. He's in Dallas now, and he is going to have his own adjustment period when it comes to fitting in with his new teammates. So you look at their roster, the players they have. I mean, my first thought is like, man, there's a lot of front court presence on this team. We talked about a little bit in the salary cap section, but front court players that they can work with. PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Najee Marshall, Caleb Martin, Derek Lively, Dwight Powell, Maxence Prosper has gotten some run with some of the injuries they've had. And that's 7 guys that are 3 through 5 that can play at any given time. So got to figure out how they all mix together. AD's going to play a lot. Okay, I get that. But Gafford, Lively, like, does AD move full time for? Does he still play some center in certain lineups? Does PJ like ever play 5 with those 3 guys there? Like, does PJ play any 3? Like, there's so many questions. I'm just like, how do they figure all that out? And I don't envy Jason Kidd, honestly, when it comes to that. So I guess something I've been wondering, I want to ask you, Corbin, is do you like the idea of AD going back to the 4, or have you gotten used to him being like a full-time 5 at this stage of his career?
I agree with the latter part. Like, I definitely do think that I've gotten used to him being the 5, but also I think that's just suited for him. Whether or not he wants to play it, I understand the physicality part of it, sort of. But like, his offensive skill set does not lend itself to the 5 at this stage right now. Like, his jump shot has gotten better this year, particularly for mid-range, just enough, right? But it's deteriorated a lot from the New Orleans years, and definitely a bit since 2020, So, being the 4, like, the quickness is still there in spots, but I do like him better as a center offensively, where I think as a 4, especially as a 4 with this lineup roster construction, he is going to have to provide a little bit of that in terms of spacing as a component there. You already have your vertical spacer in Gafford or Lively when he gets back from injury. So you are slotting AD in a different area where he's more attacking kind of from the wing spot, definitely more in that, mid-range area, and not as a hub per se, at least not the way I see it with Kyrie there. So I don't know. I like the fact that, hey, he'll be where he's comfortable, right, in that position. And he is going to play 5, particularly in crunch time. I do imagine that's just a situational advantage for Dallas that they have. But in general, just the affinity to the 5 doesn't seem to make sense to me. But with this roster construction, they have 2 legit 5s who don't have the versatility to swing to the 4 like AD does. So I think you just have to roll with it that way.
No, I'm with you. The construction of this roster just kind of requires that he plays a lot of 4, which, yeah, I mean, I also think that his best position is the 5. The past 2 seasons with the Lakers, 100% of his minutes at the 5. 2 years ago, 99% of his minutes at the 5. The last time he played a good amount of minutes at the 4 was 21-22. He played 24% at the 4, 76% at the 5. I mean, it's been a long time since he's played even a third of his minutes at the 4. And looking at these efficiency differentials here on Clean the Glass, I mean, it looks like most of the time the numbers are better when he's at the 5 based on what I'm seeing here. So, I mean, the data supports him playing the 5. His play style supports him playing the 5, being more of like a burlier, stronger type of player, a little bit slower, it seems like, in the stage of his career than he used to be in New Orleans. Kind of lends into playing the 5 more. You touched on the jump shot. He just magically started hitting everything, playing the Heat in the finals, and then just kind of dropped off, which, of course. But
naturally.
Of course, yeah. At this stage, it just seems like it's kind of like a weird fit for him going to that position. I think it sacrifices a lot of spacing if he's at the 4. If you play him and Gafford or him and Lively, it's just like, I mean, that's 2 players that I think the defense can just really kind of not pay much attention to if they're outside 10 feet of the rim. So that puts a lot of more stress on the other 3 players to get shots off, to make space for themselves, and try to make things work that way. And speaking of the other players, I mean, Kyrie's still there. So Kyrie trying to make that fit with AD. I like the balance with Kyrie bringing a lot of the scoring and AD bringing some defense. But overall in the backcourt, I think Kyrie has a big load to carry without Luka. I'm glad that Jaden Hardy is going to get more opportunity. That's a plus for sure. Max Christie is going to have some opportunities. He showed some flashes right before the trade. But overall, I mean, like against some of the elite teams in the league, especially if they have some good, really good perimeter defense, like just having Kyrie there and maybe Max Christie next to him or Hardy or Dinwiddie, it's not very inspiring to me, confidence inspiring looking at that kind of lineup. So that's my
Yeah.
other big concern with this trade. It just seems like there's not really a balance between the backcourt and the front court. The front court is loaded. The backcourt's just kind of meh. That's just something I've been thinking about.
Oh, yes, especially with the trade of Quentin Grimes. I mean, again, this isn't really about that trade, but it does factor it a little bit because yet another guy who could even kind of resemble a playmaker is gone, and so you do have more pressure on Kyrie from that playmaking perspective, more pressure even on a Klay Thompson, and that's not really the
Yeah,
type of game, right? Seeing what happens when Dante Exum gets back, like obviously, I'd behoove of me to not mention Spencer Dinwiddie, but even he can be overextended in a major role, you know what I mean? And
right.
so yeah, there's a lot there, and all those guys, with the exception of Kyrie. And obviously Clay, who's having kind of down year shoot from three, but his down years are better than most of them. But
That's
the
true.
outside shooting is a factor. May not be a crazy glaring one because you look on paper and you do have Kyrie and you do have Klay Thompson, PJ Washington can shoot the three. You have a few guys, Spencer Dinwiddie when he gets hot, but he's streaky. But like that's another thing of like consistently like generating offense. Particularly when Kyrie's on the bench. What does it look like? So yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, man, because it looks like these two teams have the opposite problem. Like with the Lakers, it's like how we're going to get enough defense on the court to not get absolutely blown up every possession.
Yeah.
And on the flip side with the Mavericks, it's like, can we generate enough offense, like in terms of like self-created baskets, like guys going out there and getting their own basket, making something happen off the dribble? Is there enough of that to sustain, even if their defense is going to be very solid? Like adding AD to this team, like that's one thing with Nico I agree with. Like their defense is going to be crazy, even with
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie out there. I mean, if you have to deal with AD and Gafford or Lively out there, good luck. That's
Yeah.
terrifying. But yeah, the scoring perspective is troubling. So it's interesting that they're on like two different ends of the spectrum when it comes to their strengths and weaknesses. Uh, like really interesting stuff. So I think overall with this Mavericks roster, are they set up to win now? Yes and no.
Yeah.
Like I can see them winning some games here post All-Star break, finishing with a top 4 or 5 record in the conference, uh, getting into the playoffs. Depending on the matchup, possibly winning a round. But other than that, I mean, I just see too many glaring holes in the backcourt. If they end up playing Minnesota in a playoff series or a
Ooh.
team like that that just has a lot of guys that can throw at those backcourt players and have enough support defensively and inside, yeah, I see a lot of problems for them.